What is the one thing that online dating sites report is most likely to produce a connection between two individuals? People think it's physical attractiveness. That's what they report that it would be. But if you look into the data, that's not the thing that is most correlated with choice. The thing that's most correlated with choice of a partner, yes, let's go out on a date, let's take this to the next communication stage, it's similarity. We're comfortable with people who are like us.
Imagine that you're a college professor and you're well liked by your students and faculty members, and you decide to write a book. And as a matter of fact, the book you decide to write would have just only have one word as its title. As a Genius Network member, you know that the statistics of how many books the ordinary author usually sells. Dean Jackson recently told us that under 250 copies in a lifetime. Most books that don't sell end up recycled as toilet paper, if you don't know that. But this one did not. Over 5 million copies. Imagine that one word book title would sell over 5 million copies. And plus, it would be named by Fortune magazine as one of the best 75 business books ever written. I think it's in the top 5. Now, CEO Reed rates the book as one of the 100 best books of all time. And Joe Polish rates it as one of the 5 best books, as I do, he's ever read. By now, you might have guessed that this book, and the college professor wrote the book in 1984. It's a year I graduated college, and it's titled Influence. And the author is our next speaker. Now, our next speaker is the president of CEO of Influence at Work. I've been to his workshops, and he's a global provider of corporate keynotes, consulting, training done by his team of trainers. And his clients are some of the world's biggest and most successful companies. One of his tips I taught my daughter when she was waiting tables, and she got triple her tips and gratuity just by offering mints. And that's a story that he taught me over 10 years ago. He's no stranger to Genius Network. He spoke to us back in 2018, and he was recently on I Love Marketing and was a special guest at the 100K, the Genius X meeting just a week or so ago. Today, it will be a little different so that you can have a greater connection with our next speaker and his work on influencing the people that you're trying to do business with. He and Joel are going to have a fireside chat with questions. That's you, Joel, right? And it was created by his new expanded book called Influence, which is the thicker version that I just showed you. And it belongs in everyone's library. One for you, one for a friend, and one for someone who you've had challenges influencing. That would be a great strategy. This book just came out last week, and we're going to open it up for your questions and discussions and the concepts that he's sharing with you. Now, please write down your questions to yourself in real time, because these questions will come up as you're asking them. And it's a good idea just to write them down so you have a list, and that way we can not only honor him, but we can honor you with answering them. Welcome, the godfather of influence, Dr. Robert Cialdini.
Well, thank you, Alex. And I understand that Joe is going to helm this interview, and I'm curious to hear the kinds of questions that he's going to ask and the kind of question that you folks will ask as well. That's always the most interesting and adventurous part of any kind of exchange, because I get to learn some things in that exchange. It's not just from the front of the room to the back, which happens in classrooms very often. No, there's an exchange, and I get new insights out of the information as well.
Well, Robert, thank you. And so glad that you've joined us. Now, we've got to give Babette, your wife, credit, because she sent 60 of the editions to that new book that Alex just told us about. And then she encouraged me to make the questions up as a result of that. So your beloved wife and I worked on these together, and I think we've got some good ones to get started. So we're going to use half of our time for these questions, and then we're going to open it up to the members who are going to introduce themselves to you with what we call their introduction or 3G card, and then they're going to ask the questions. So question number one, for the one or two people in Genius Network that haven't read Influence, in 3 or 4 minutes, could you give us a summary of what that book was when you wrote it in 1984 and what it is today?
Yes, of course. Well, the book's title, Influence, really captures the topic at hand. And there are various ways to influence people. We can pay them to move in the direction we want. We can punish them or penalize them for failing to do it. We can order them to change if we're in a position of hierarchical authority over them. We could even trick them, deceive them into change. All of those have significant costs, either economic capital or social capital costs. For me, the way that I wanted to write Influence, the book, was to recommend persuasion as the way to produce that influence that's almost costless. All we have to do very frequently is to change a word or a phrase, maybe sometimes just the sequence of the wording that we use, and we can get significant movement in the direction that we are recommending. And at the time that I wrote the book, I thought I had identified the 6 universal principles of influence that pretty much covered the waterfront in being able to move people in our direction if we included one or another into a message that we sent. We would significantly increase the likelihood of success. Now, the word likelihood is very important there. We never get certainty. This is human behavior. This isn't magic. This is human behavior. So we always increase the odds. We increase the probabilities of success when we include one or another of these universal principles in a message, in an appeal especially. But that doesn't mean that we can't count on them. We can count on them because we've raised the odds to beat our competitors. Right? If we've got the odds on our side so that the probabilities of yes to a request are significantly greater than those of a competitor who doesn't know what these principles are, we win. We win every time over the long term.
Well, that was terrific. Very concise. Now, according to the new thing that you've done, you have added a 7th universal principle, which is so appropriate for our theme of connection, for the theme of this Genius Network meeting. What is that 7th principle, and how does it apply to Genius Network members?
Okay, that's a good question, and it's a differentiator for the new edition as opposed to the other editions. I should just name the 6 principles and then go on to the 7th, but the principles are reciprocation. People say yes to those they owe. So if we go first with benefits, advantages, information, they give that back to us in terms of benefits and advantages in return. Liking, nobody's surprised that we prefer to say yes to those we know and like, but there are 2 very simple things we can do to highlight and enhance the rapport that people feel with us. One is to point to genuine similarities. Another is to give genuine compliments. Third principle is social proof. It's a term that we coined back in 1984 in that first edition. Now people use the term all the time, and it means that people want to follow the lead of their peers. What those around them, like them, have been doing or are doing reduces their uncertainty as to what they should do in that situation. If we can give them evidence like that, they will significantly more likely say yes to the request that accompanies that evidence. Fourth is authority. And the people also want to reduce their uncertainty by following the lead of the experts in a situation. Again, if we can give them evidence that there are expert voices that are aligned with the proposal or the request that we are making of them, they will more likely say yes. Next principle is commitment and consistency. People want to be consistent with what they have already said or done. If we can show them how what we have to offer is congruent with the commitments that they've already made, especially in public, especially in front of us, we significantly, once more, increase the probabilities that they will say yes to that proposal. Scarcity is the sixth principle, the idea that people want more of those things they can have less of. And if we can honestly show them that what we have is scarce, rare, dwindling in availability to them, gives them something unique that they can't get elsewhere, they pile in to the offers that we make under those circumstances. And now we come to the seventh principle. It's what I'm calling unity. For a communicator, if as a communicator, we can arrange for people to see us as sharing membership in a group, an important group that they use to define themselves, that they use to identify who they are, all influence barriers come down to us. They just come down, right? Because inside those we groups, people trust us more. They cooperate with us more. They believe us more. And for the bottom line, they say yes to us significantly more often. They comply with our requests, proposals, and recommendations significantly more often. And this is different from similarity inside the liking principle, where if we see that we have similar tastes or preferences or style orientations to other people, that causes us to like them more, and that's successful. This isn't similarity like that. This is similarity of membership in a category, a group that we use to define ourselves. Let me give you an example from a study that was done on a college campus. Researchers took a young woman, college-age student, young woman, put her on a very heavily trafficked spot on campus, and asked her to request donations for a legitimate charity from students who were passing by. And she got some results from that. She got some contributions. But she was able to more than double contributions by adding one more sentence.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this video, and I want to let you know that I have a new book that's come out, and if you'd like to get it absolutely free, there's a link below in the description, or you can wait till the end of this video, or you can simply go to joesfreebook.com and you can get a copy there.
To the request, it was, I'm a student here too. I'm of you. I'm one of you. And all the barriers came down. And these college students who don't have a lot of money were 250% more likely to reach into their wallets or purses and make a contribution. Right? Let me give you a personal example of how this works, where you can identify an existing category in which you exist with somebody else, right? And simply raising that commonality to consciousness makes all the difference. a while ago, I had a project that I needed to complete by the end of the next day. I had to submit the project. And as I was reading through the final draft of my report that was going to request that the project be approved and funded, I noticed there was a section in the report that wasn't really compelling. I didn't have the evidence I needed to make that case in a convincing way. But I knew I had a colleague, let's call him Tim, it's not his real name, who did have the data like that because he had done an experiment the year before that provided that evidence. And so I sent him an email. I said, Tim, I'm going to call you in a few minutes, but I want to put you on alert that I have this need for some data that you have in your archives. I have this problem. I have this report due tomorrow. I need it today. Could you go into your archives? I'm going to ask you if you can go in, take the data out, get it into a form that I can use, and send it across to me today. So I sent that and then waited a few minutes and I called him. Now I have to tell you, Tim was renowned in my psychology department for being a sour, irascible guy, a difficult guy. This was a difficult guy. So when I called him, he answered the phone. He said, "Hello, Bob. I know why you're calling." And the answer is no. You say you have deadlines. I have deadlines. You say you need to have this done by the end of the day. I have things that have to be done by the end of the day. I can't just respond to every time you need something because you have poor time management skills. No, the answer is no. Before I read the research on unity, here's what I would have said to Tim. Come on, Tim. I really need this. I have this thing. It needs the data that you have, and it also is due tomorrow. He had already said no to that. Instead, here's what I said. Come on, Tim. We've been members of the same psychology department now for 12 years. I had the information that afternoon because I reminded him of a connection that we had. I know the title of this meeting is Connection. This was a we connection. This was a connection that we used to define who we were, identify ourselves, right? And those things have massive power to move people in our direction, right? So I know we'll probably come back to this in some of your questions about how you actually do this to harness the power of unity, but I'll leave it at that at this point.
Well, I'm going to vary our program right now because in listening to you and watching you, you are doing so many things in a virtual world that are exceptional. Because one of the things, Robert, if you remember when you were here in 2018, I critique all of our speakers, and we've reestablished that in this Zoom or virtual world. So I want to point out a couple of things as a member that you should be noticing. Notice his eye contact. Now, if you were to look at me on the screen, I'm going to look at you at the screen, Robert. Here's what I would look like. Look at me on the screen, too.
I'm looking.
Okay. We're not looking at the screen. We're looking at you. And Robert, you did that so beautifully. All your comments were to your audience, and the audience is always in the camera. Great idea. The other thing, we learned this at our last meeting, the hand gestures, the two most important ways virtually you can connect, your eyes and your hands, and all of those gestures were just perfectly done. And the third thing that you do so well is you soften your voice.
Yeah.
And you slow it down. And she only asked one other question. These are the things that you can use to make even better presentations. So even though we're just at the beginning of this discussion, congratulations for doing those wonderful things. And now I'm going to put you on the spot with the next question.
Well, let me just respond to what you just
All
said,
right, respond.
because I took your advice back in 2018, Joel. You know what I said about you listen to authorities, you listen to experts, you listen to people who have the background and credentials that reduce your uncertainty about what step you should take. I listened, Joel, and let me just say that one last thing that you mentioned, modulating your voice, changing the speed and even the volume. I'll tell you why that works. After you told me about it, I actually went and dove into the literature in scientific literature on communication and voice change and so on. There's a reason that works. It's something called the orienting response. That is, our brains respond to change by orienting to the next thing that occurs after there's been a change in the stimulus of this stimuli of a situation, right? And you pay greatest attention to the thing that immediately follows a change, right? So here's the lesson I learned from you, Joel. You know where I want to put my most important or resonating information? It's immediately after I change the volume or the pace of what I am saying.
Well, that is so wonderful. And I think it makes such a good point. Oh, that's not what you're talking about. Well, thank you for sharing that. That evidence was wonderful. Now, here's a little offbeat, but it's right into the new book that you've written. Next question. Since this meeting's theme is on connection, we have a number of members, quite a few, that are single, and they're looking for partners. Can you tell us the factor that online dating sites have found that makes a potential romantic partner most desirable, both to men and women?
Right.
Since this is now new to the book. How about that one, Robert?
And I'm going to answer that in two ways. One is, how do you obtain such a relationship? How do you get that relationship, a good one with somebody that you haven't met before? And then there's another set of research I want to talk about. How do you maintain the strength and even bolster the strength of that relationship? So the first one, what is the one thing that online dating sites report is most likely to produce a connection between two individuals? People think it's physical attractiveness. That's what they report that it would be. But if you look into the data, that's not the thing that is most correlated with choice. The thing that's most correlated with choice of a partner, yes, let's go out on a date, let's take this to the next communication stage, it's similarity. We're comfortable with people who are like us, right? And if you can establish not just like us, but of us, and build in both similarity and that comes with through liking, and unity, a sense of deep shared identity, that's gold. Those are the things you should, in any initial interaction, search for, sample around, ask questions for, and when you encounter those commonalities, bring them to the surface. There was a lovely study done on negotiators, professional negotiators. They were bargaining, and because of all of the problems associated with people being in the same room these days, they were negotiating by email. Email is the most bloodless communication channel we've ever developed, right? There's no humanity there. Researchers had these individuals bargain by email, and under those circumstances, because there was such a lack of common humanity in the exchange, in 30% of the cases, they were stymied. They walked away with no agreement, no mutual agreement. Both sides just lost nothing. They got nothing out of it. But if the researchers had another half of the negotiators send some information to one another before the negotiation began, information about themselves. What are your interests? What are your hobbies? Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? What was your major? These kinds of things in school. That stymied negotiations went from 30% to 6%. Once those similarities are there, for example, people would learn in that information, oh, you're a runner? I'm a runner. You're an only child? I'm an only child. You have teenagers? I have teenagers. It was those connections, not the amount of humanizing information that was sent. It was the information that revealed parallels and commonalities that didn't exist before. So those are the kinds of things that when we are beginning a relationship and seeking arenas in which we can move forward with it, similarities is the platform from which you should start. Now, let's say you've got that relationship, and it may even be a long-standing one, let's say quite a few months, but there's a problem. There's some sort of difficulty that you're having with your partner, and you just can't seem to get over the top of it. It just keeps coming up. There was a study done in Texas. They took couples that had this issue, some issue that was preventing them from being entirely compatible, and they nominated one of the people and said, we want you to be the persuader to try to convince your partner to come into line with you on this. And then the researchers said, you do that here in this conference room, we're going to leave. Well, they didn't really leave. They had video cameras going, they had tape recorders, they knew what was going on. And there were three kinds of persuaders who emerged from this. The worst in terms of effectiveness was the one that the researchers called the coercive punishing persuader, who said, you know, you better do this for me or you'll be sorry. And I'll have to do some things that you don't want, that you don't like. Right? Not only was that a failure of moving the partner in the requested direction, it had a boomerang effect, and it actually polarized the partner to be further away. So we certainly want to leave that out as a strategy. The second was what the researchers called the rational, logical approach, where the persuader said, you know, if you'll just take a closer look at this situation, the problem that we're having, you'll see that my position is the more reasonable one. Yeah, now that didn't produce polarization. It produced laughter. They just, the partners said, oh yeah, sure, right. No change at all. But there was a minority, a small minority of persuaders who used the only strategy that worked. They simply said, you know, we've been together now for whatever the amount of months were. I really wish you'd do this for me. That's where I got my cue for talking to my colleague, Tim. You know, Tim, we've been in the same psychology department. I wish you, for 12 years, I wish you would do this for me. That was essentially the same language that came out of this study of personal relationships, not business relationships, a personal relationship. Right? They were the only ones who got change, right? And notice something about it. They added no new facts to their position. They didn't clarify the logic of it, or the reasonableness, the rationality. None of it. They just pointed to a unit that existed. They pointed to a category. Couple. We are a couple. This is what I was so impressed with in those people who did it. They didn't sit still for the psychological frame that the researchers gave them. Difference. We want you to talk about and focus on a difference between you. They said to themselves, yeah, there's this difference. But what characterizes us is something much larger. We are a couple. They raise the couple status to consciousness. That's all they needed to do. How many times have you had long-standing relationships with colleagues at work, with clients, with customers, and there's a new issue to be negotiated, to be hammered out? We would be fools of the influence process if we didn't raise the existing relationship to consciousness before we began. Because remember what I said at the outset. Inside that relationship, people trust us more. They want to cooperate with us more. They believe us more. And they want to say yes to us more. Bring that to the surface, and now all of those things that are associated with the we come into relief and dominate and drive the decision.
Robert, this is wonderful. I'm going to vary our plan again because you're so good at this. You've given us so much material right now. So just so you know, you're on Arizona time. 11:50 is our stop time, and we have a 10-minute exercise. We go into lunch right at noon. So since we have plenty of time now, I'm going to pause my questions and let's open it up to the Genius Network members so that they can ask a question based on the first four questions or so that I've asked you.
Right.
And what we're going to do is Tarna is involved with looking at all of you on the virtual line. And then I'm going to take people right here. Howard Getson has got, now remember the rule, you've got to bring your 3G card with you, introduce yourself, and ask Robert your question. We're going to keep these short and snappy. And remember, when you ask a question, you're not giving a sermon. The purpose of the question is to have Robert answer it, not giving your personal opinion on something else. Howard, tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, I resemble that first, but hi, I'm Howard.
Let me.
No, it's okay. I'll bend down. I'm sure I'll get shorter as I get older. Hi, I'm Howard Getson. I have an amplified intelligence technology platform that helps entrepreneurs make better decisions, take smarter actions, and continually improve performance. And I have been a fan of yours for years. One of the things that's so fascinating to me, as somebody who loves thinking about psychology and knowing and better decision making, is in literature, there's hundreds of cognitive biases and theories of the day. But your book has remained so consistent, 6 or 7 core principles. What do you think allows you to so confidently say that there's 6 or 7 core principles that work versus those hundreds of more tactical items?
2 sources of information. One is before I began to write about the principles of influence, I went undercover and was a kind of spy of sorts in as many influence training programs as I could get access to. I learned how to sell automobiles, insurance, portrait photography. I didn't stop there. I infiltrated marketing organizations, advertising agencies, public relations firms, even charities. What do fundraisers do to get us to say yes? In all of those cases, I looked for the commonalities, not the things that car salesmen used versus what, not the differences between them. I looked for what was the same across that range of influence professions in which people's economic livelihood depends on the success of the strategies they used. And the biggest surprise I got was how small the footprint was of universal principles, the ones that were being taught in each of those industries, in each of those professions to move people in our direction, right? Just the six principles at that time. That's the first piece. The second piece is now we're in a digital age, right? What works best there? There was a study done of 6,700 e-commerce websites, right? Platforms. And the researchers looked at A/B tests within those 6,700 sites for the features that were most likely to produce a conversion from prospect to customer. Right? They found 29 of them, 29 different features. Some of them were economic, like do they provide free delivery? Some of them were technological. Is there a search function inside the site? Some of them were persuasive. Is there a call to action line at the end of the appeal? Right. The six principles were the top six. Influences on the influence process. That's how I know these things are fundamental to the human condition. They're not dependent on a particular platform or delivery system or even era. When I was doing this back in the 80s, that's a long time away from now, they're still the six top principles because they engage features of who we are as a species.
Very good. Boy, you're good. All right, Tarna, now let's go to our virtual audience. I'm letting you decide who, based on what's in the chat box, what's raising hands. Tarna, you're in charge. Put whoever's on. And remember, when you get on, use your 3G card. And also, we're going to limit this, so we want to get first-timers. In other words, first time speaking at this meeting. So if you've already spoken, the chances are I'm not going to call on you again. So, Tarna, who do we've got?
All right, next? First up, Joel, we've got Paul Colligan. I believe the Freeman's question was answered, but if you wanted to bring any context to that, Jocelyn or Aaron, you're welcome to just chime in once Paul and Robert Cialdini are done with one another. And then Edwin, I know you had a question about the unity principle a few minutes ago as well. If you would like to ask that personally, feel free to go right after the Freemans. And if there's anyone else that would, we do still have, I believe, about 20 minutes. So please share in the chat or just raise your hand on the bottom toolbar of your Zoom bar.
All right, wonderful. Paul Colligan, give us your 3G card and then ask Robert.
My name is Paul Colligan, and I've been in Genius Network since 2008. I've got a successful Done With You podcasting agency and a war chest of premium marketing tools that gives you the ability to produce profitable content crazy fast and with much less drama, that gets a podcast everywhere that impacts your world and delivers your leads. I want help finding clients ready to do real business with the power of their message.
Now your question for Robert.
All right, Robert. So I have been asking myself this question for a long time. And the amount of times where I've thought if I could ask the good doctor this question, I think it might change everything. So good doctor, are you ready? And even if you're not, I'm going ahead anyway. Scarcity. I'm in the podcasting space. The benefit of podcasting is anytime, any place, anywhere. Zero scarcity. That's our delivery. That's our promise. That is what makes podcasting so beautiful. As a result, as we know, if people can consume a podcast anytime, any place, anywhere, it's on the back burner. How do we make something that is anytime, any place, anywhere scarce?
There are a couple of ways to do it, but for me, I think it has to do with how you can make what you offer, the frame, the character of what you offer, unique. if it's unique, if it's uncommon, if people can't get access to the factors, and sometimes it's not just one factor that makes what you have to offer unique, but it's a suite, a combination of factors that only your company can provide to your clients, to your customers, right? That gives you inherent scarcity. It's not how many of these that are available to them or how much time they have to move, although those things work, right? But if you have a combination of features, factors, ingredients that together your competition can't provide, that's what should go to the top of your presentation. That differentiator.
So the scarcity then for a podcast episode or show or whatever would be that, okay, there are 50 episodes about marketing or 50 shows about marketing out there, but only one of them has Joe. And you only have a certain amount of time. So you better listen to Joe's I Love Marketing over everybody else.
Exactly.
Ooh,
so you've just done what a lot of people were saying they loved about the new version of the book is that we talk about specific words to employ to harness the principles like scarcity. You just did it.
Thank you. I'm taking notes. I'm going to get to work. Next question. Or I'll keep going. I mean, this guy's smart.
Oh, you had your chance, Paul. Next. Tarna?
All right. Aaron or Jocelyn, did you want to share, or Edwin? And if not, anyone is free to chime in with a thought, a question, or a share for Dr. Cialdini.
And we have some here too.
Okay, wonderful.
We just wanted to say we've read your book and it was fantastic, and we used the principles and it made a difference immediately. And that extra principle you provided around unity answered our question. So thank you very much.
Let me just suggest one other new thing. There's a lot of new things. Joel said that we sent people a list of 66 new things, but here's one that I think would apply to a lot of you folks. If you have a startup, if you have something that doesn't have a lot of social proof already going for it because it's new, or a new product or a new feature, and people just aren't ready to go there yet because there's not a lot of evidence from ratings or reports from others, or even purchases from others, right? Here's the way to use social proof in a way that we've never described before. Describe the trend to wherever you are now, even if it's not a lot of people purchasing it or a lot of market share or anything like that. If you say we've got, let's say, 20% market share, right? At this point, that's just a statistic. People don't know what to do with that. But if you say 6 months ago it was 5%, 3 months ago it was 10%, this month it's 20%, here's what happens. People will project the next data point on that trend forward, and you will get advantage of something we can call future social proof. It's not existing social proof. They project any trend that has at least 3 data points on into the future at the same function that they see. And suddenly, we actually did some research like this, and the reason people were swayed by a trend to 20% versus just the statistic 20% is that they predicted that soon it would be 30%. And after that, 40%. So you get this thing called future social proof going for you that you didn't have without a trend. We all have trends. We just have to show people those trends rather than a statistic.
Thank you. We have a local.
Hello, Robert. So I did my master's in psychology, and I started that because of you. And I met my wife because of you, and I built my whole business based on your principles. So big fan.
Wow. Gratified.
Yeah. So hopefully my wife thanks you. But I've got an investor club with 500 investors registered. We give investors deal flow, strategies, tax insights, et cetera. And we're looking to build our investorclub.com platform and commercialrealestate.com and basically build that to 3,000 plus investors. So my question is, after studying your principles a lot, I focus on stacking my two favorite. So authority, but becoming such an authority that you're a scarce resource in yourself, and then you're a scarce authority. But with all of your experience and you living this for 30 years, what's your number one favorite principle? And do you have a different 1-2 stack or a stacking that is most powerful?
Yes, and it has to do with something that my colleague, Dr. Gregory Neidert, has developed, the core motives model of persuasion. There is a stacking, a timing feature to the model. It says you have to decide which of the principles you are best advised to use based on the nature of the relationship that you have with your audience. If it's a very early relationship, if you don't have an existing relationship, you use the 3 principles that establish rapport and connection and build that rapport. They are reciprocity. You give first to those folks information most efficiently. You can give people information that they don't have about how to invest well. That establishes not just the desire to give back to you, it also establishes your authority in the area. So reciprocity, liking, so similarities and complements, very important there, and then unity, where you can find unity. Once you've got that established, now you need, even if people are positively inclined toward you, they may not want to move in your direction or maybe not move in your direction right now, right? Because they're still uncertain if you are the right person to partner with and this is the right time to do it. That's where social proof and authority come in. They reduce people's uncertainty of what should be their next step. If a lot of people like them are doing it, oh, okay, then it's probably right for me. If a lot of authorities are saying this is the right thing, oh, okay, I can get off the fence now. I can get off the sidelines is probably a better way to say it, and into the game. Now, when you've got those established, sometimes that's not enough to actually get people to behave. You can reduce their uncertainty, you can get them favorable to you, but to get them to move, scarcity and commitment and consistency. Commitment and consistency, you can show them how what they have already done or said or valued, right, is consistent with moving in your direction, and that gets them off the dime and in your direction. The other is scarcity, where they say, I better move now or I'm going to lose this thing.
Right. So part of it is the sequence of the principles you use at the right time to create rapport, and then use that momentum to actually get them to take action with some of the other principles, I guess, right?
Precisely right. It's sequencing. So, the fact that we have just 7 principles of influence gets compartmentalized even into a smaller unit. So it's 3 at the beginning, 2 in the middle, and then 2 more at the end where you need that extra oomph.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're wonderful. Now we got about 8.5 minutes left, and we've got a lot of people that have some questions, and we have one more local, and then Donna will go to the virtual one, and we have a very first-time attendee. Tony, come on up and introduce yourself. Even though we gave you one shot, you get one more. First time out.
I'm Tony Schindler. This is my first meeting. I've got an industry-leading brick and click specialty patio furniture company that gives people the opportunity to find their patio bliss. that gets them more quality rest, relaxation, and outdoor leisure time with friends and family. I want help positioning the company to attract top talent to grow revenues to $1 billion plus. As I was listening to you talk about the new principle, the unity principle, what kind of came into my head was I was wondering if this could be used, if that unity principle could be used to de-escalate customer service issues. And where my mind was kind of going with it is, we're in this together. If our customer service agents, had a call from a hot customer, would that be an effective way to kind of create that unity? Like, we're working on this problem together. And I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yes, it is. And I'm going to suggest one thing that, the unity, you can generate it by pointing out commonalities of purpose, that you have a partnership in all this. We are together in this. And there's a way to do it in which you essentially use co-creation, even in the case of a customer dispute. One way to use co-creation, of course, is to ask our customers, our clients, our prospects to help us forge the next version of our products or service or experience you get to people. And I'm a great advocate of that. That really does help produce the unity that we're talking about. And here's a study that shows it. If you present an idea, let's say an outline for a new initiative or a new product, and you want people around you, let's say your colleagues, to buy into it, or you want your clients to buy into it before you go forward, you ask for their advice. You ask for their feedback on it, right? But what we frequently do is ask for their opinion, and that's a mistake. When you ask for someone's opinion about what we should do next, you get a critic. People go inside themselves and decide how they should react to the thing that they've now separated themselves from, what you're offering them. Right? If instead of using the word opinion, you ask for their advice on the best next thing for you to do, you get a partner instead of a critic. You get a co-actor instead of a critic. And the research shows that when you ask for feedback on a particular idea or problem, right, and you ask for advice versus opinion, you get significantly more buy-in and favorable response to that idea, because you've asked them to partner with you, a form of unity. So one word, change opinion to advice.
Thank you, Robert. Now we have just about 3 minutes left. Would you like to do the closing comments and wrap this up in those 3 minutes? Or would you like to have one more question?
I think
Joel,
I'd like to have an.
Oh, wait. Tanner's in charge now. Go ahead, Tanner.
We've got a couple more in the virtual that we had already promised that they could share. I was just going to ask if we could do just a rapid question,
You're in
rapid
charge.
answers.
Okay.
And maybe we'll have our next special guest on just a couple minutes late, if that's okay. But Robert, I know that there's some members that have got great questions for you. So we're going to go with, Sandra, Edwin, and then Lee. They're all ready. So Sandra, take it away. We're going to go fast here.
I'm Sandra Scheinbaum. I have an online school that trains health coaches in collaboration with the Institute for Functional Medicine. It's been referred to as the gold standard in health coaching education. And like you, I am a member of the same generation and also live in the Phoenix area. I'm a psychologist and longtime teacher. My question is, how can we offer support to you? We teach you the concepts. We recommend your book. And how can I, as well as others in Genius Network, help you?
Well, wonderful. We have a website that's influenceatwork.com. If you were to, we have an info section there. If you were to comment on that section, and we can begin an interaction to see what you provide and what our challenges are that might connect.
Thank you.
Okay, Edwin, go ahead.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's an honor to ask the question. I read your book. I don't know how many times, so that's very cool. My name is Edwin Salai. I'm a Genius Network member since 2020. I've got an hypnosis institute in Europe that gives people the skills to help people with psychosomatic issues in just 3 sessions. That gets them more income, passion, and fulfillment. And my question is, because when they do a course, they leave. And I don't know what they're doing. And it's fine, of course, everybody can do what they want. But my question is, how can you install, and that's maybe a wrong word, I don't know, but unity in clients or people who follow your courses, so they just feel still feel connected.
You know, I'm going to hark back to something I alluded to in an earlier question, and that is co-creation. You should be asking them not just their opinions about what they went through, but how they could give you advice on sharpening your procedures or practices in a way that would produce a more effective experience for the next people. And believe me, it's not like if you ask for your people's advice, they will say, oh, well, these people don't know what they're talking about. They need to get some other advice. Benjamin Franklin had a great quote. He said, "We are always impressed by the wisdom of people who come to us for advice." Right? So that's what I would suggest. Use co-creation. Help get those folks partnered with you for everybody's benefit. Everybody's benefit.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
Edwin, that was such a great intro for me. Hi, Robert. This is Lee Richter. We've met a couple times. Yes. I will say, positioning wise, we met at 100K. You came in the room for 2 days with Bobette. And what was so amazing about that, I think it was 2016. What was so amazing is at the end of day 1, you and Bobette went home. The next day you came back. You told me about your granddaughter who loves animals, and you guys lit up the room. Number 1, because I'm in the animal space, so we connected there. Number 2, we connected over my daughter, Abby, who at the time was like 11 and now going to be a senior in high school. So it's amazing to see that change. But also, we connected over you saying you took more notes in that room in one day than you had in the 10 years previous, based on the knowledge and expertise in that room. And what I loved is that you were so happy about going home and letting it sit in your head and coming back the next day with questions and being the learner in the room, not the teacher. And I just want to say I'm honored that not only that you shared that space, but that also you let us all know to also be in that space in other rooms. And I'm in that space every time you're in the room. I'm learning. I want to tell you who I am and the team. I'm Lee Richter. I've been a member since 2015. I have a PR and marketing company that gives global leaders a way to share their genius. I want to not only share their genius, but it gets attention and action. I want to create action, like you said, results, right? So I want help this week with launching a program with the Kobe Bryant Foundation, the Family Foundation, who is making a donation to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So what they want to do is make a positive impact through music, arts, sports, and creating, like you said, co-creation and the community. So what I want to ask you is, just like Edwin, we want to get the word out, but now I'm giving you specifics, the Kobe Family Foundation. I'm giving you the Make-A-Wish Foundation. We have the Genius members, like those are audiences. If you were me, how would you bring it out and create and co-create and create that movement while teaching about NFTs and art and new things? Because what I'm learning is, as we're teaching people about NFTs and art, which is what this program is about, it takes more than 7 minutes to get people on board in a cryptocurrency and in a wallet. And there's a lot of education. So how can I position it to get them interested, but not overwhelmed by the process?
I'm going to ask you to do it with imagery so that they don't have to process a lot of information. Imagery comes in and has an immediate impact that just translates immediately into the brain. But you said the Kobe Bryant Association, right? The Family
Foundation. They're donating a piece
You've got Make-A-Wish. You've got, and it sounds like you've got a lot of people who have spoken positively about what you're doing and so on.
Well, it's actually for them. It's their project, and they're asking me to come in and be the multiplier. In other words, I'm coming in and taking a piece of art, turning it into NFTs, and getting people involved in a movement, which is being involved in the cryptocurrency movement rather than being left behind.
All right. So I would use the authority principle that comes from all of those individuals that you just described, but also those individuals who are recognized, Elon Musk, for example, in cryptocurrency, and put their names and affiliations first. Put it at the top of your appeal. We typically put those kinds of insignia and various symbols associated with these organizations at the bottom. It's at the bottom. No, we put it at the top, so those authority and credible sources infuse everything we are about to say before we say it, so that in the minds of the individuals who are going to be getting the information, there's an authority aura that you place first, that you want to be active in everything you say afterwards.
Okay. I love that. So the CEO of Giftology, his name is John Rulin, amazing giver, right? And actually, he's even sent your book to me, not knowing that I knew you and got your book. We were with Warren Buffett when I got to get my favorite books from you.
Yes.
And like having that experience, he didn't know you and I had that experience. He showed up educating me about you and your principles through him and Giftology. Now, Giftology is a big piece of this. Right. How do I honor him in this? I don't want him to be overlooked by the big names of Kobe Bryant and Make-A-Wish. How do I include him and the artist? Do I just put them in the title as well, or?
He should be there, but I would say, once again, we were talking about immediately after there's a change, people focus. Immediately after you have a subhead or a shift in the materials, locate him and his name.
Okay, so he should be like the second or third paragraph after the big announcement.
Provided there's a clear change there. Do it with a subtitle.
Okay. Oh, I like that idea. Even in a news release, do it in a subtitle. Okay, I hope this was helpful for everyone as you're multiplying and getting your word out there. This is such valuable information. I'm so grateful for you, Robert, for sharing your generosity and your spirit with all of us. Thank you.
Well, Lee, you're wonderful too. That was great.
Yeah.
Connor, did you say you had one more?
Nope.
Oh,
we're all set.
Okay. All right. Well, Robert, would you like to make a closing comment before we just wave and thank you so much for the brilliance that you just shared with us?
I would just say that the most important thing for me is the ethical use of these principles by simply pointing to them where they naturally exist in the situation, rather than fabricating them at any way at all. And maybe the second thing to say is that we now have an online on-demand workshop that provides training in how to operate in an ethical and effective, especially effective way inside the influence domain. And
well, can we put that in the follow-up material, Gina? And Robert's contact information. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
And again, let's thank him with our good wave and applause locally. That was wonderful.
Okay, I hope you found that video awesome and useful. So if you want to get a free copy of my book, I want you to click here. And if you want to watch some more videos that'll be useful and awesome, click here. Go ahead. You're over here. Do it now. Come on. Thank you. Watch them.